Well, what's going on, Merge? How you doing? You guys all right? You good? Hey, thanks to those that are joining and watching online. Welcome to Merge. I will tell you that it is so good to have you here tonight. All right, and I am looking forward to the conversation that we're going to be continuing in the series that we're calling Overflow. All right. How many of you were here last week? All right, most of you, good. And so you remember these fun guys, all right? They're empty today because I wasn't going to make a mess like I did last week because I had to clean it up and it was miserable. So we're just going to keep going with our conversation. It's good. We're going to get to the buckets in a little bit, but it's fun. What, is this working? Yes, it is.
No, you sound very retro.
Retro's what I was going for. Where's the handheld? Ooh. I'll take that. What mic am I using? I feel like every time I need a mic, I have to stand at Carter's mic. I've got Carter's here. Check, 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 check. Hey! Do I sound retro? Yes, it's my natural tone, all right? Guys, thanks for being here. So, how many of you went back to in-person school this week? All right. How many of you were like, yeah, I could have stayed online and been just fine? All right, that's good. That's good. You're honest. Fall has arrived. It's cold outside. Well, actually not that bad, but we moved inside tonight. Guys, I just want you to know in a couple of weeks, we'll let you know the exact date, but Merge is going to be relocating back over to the Gent Road building, all right? We don't know the exact date yet, but we will be shifting over there. We need just a little bit more space in the lobby areas. We'll utilize this building when the weather's nice, all right? And so once game day's over in the winter and winter goes away and spring comes back, we'll move back over here so that we can be outside. But we'll be shifting over there probably mid-October. It might be Hallow Merge. We'll see. We'll communicate it more next week. We're just trying to figure that out. So just wanted to let you know, okay? All right, hey, do me a favor. You need a Bible. So whether it's on your phone or if you brought your Bibles, great. If you don't have a Bible, let me know. I will give you one before you leave tonight. Would love for you to have one, but you're going to need it. So download the Bible app if you don't have a copy of it. We're going to be in John chapter 4. John chapter 4. And I will tell you this story is one that I actually taught about a month and a half ago. And so if you were here then you would remember this story. But I want to bring this story back to surface because, one, it really helps us understand this concept of overflow. But it's a different perspective that I think really makes sense for us today. All right? And so John chapter 4, I'm actually going to read this a little bit, and then we're going to press in. All right? John chapter 4, looking at verse 1. You can follow along on the screens too. Here's what it says. Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John. All right, remember last week I introduced you to a character. What was his name? John the what? Baptist. All right, and so here we go. We're learning a little bit more about John here. But the Pharisees caught wind that Jesus was really gaining more traction, right? Interacting with people, baptizing more people, and so it got the attention of the Pharisees. All right, verse 2. Although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, it was his disciples. So verse 3, so he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of the ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. Verse 7. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" All right, and so here we go. You probably remember this story well, but we have just kind of like unpack this a little bit. We need to try to figure out who this woman is, right? Why is it that this interaction with she and Jesus was so unique, and why we're bringing this up again? We'll get to that in just a second. But like I already mentioned, John the Baptist is mentioned here in chapter 4. We see this because the Pharisees were already raising a flag towards John the Baptist, like, what's going on? Last week I shared with you that John the Baptist knew that he was kind of laying the groundwork, laying the, just kind of getting things ready for the Messiah. He didn't know who the Messiah was, but he knew what was going down. And so he felt that he had work to do to start laying the groundwork for Jesus when he got here. And so without knowing Jesus, that's what he was doing. So now Jesus is here on earth, and he's going about doing his ministry, right? He kind of had his all-star ministry. He had his disciples following him. Everywhere Jesus went, he was starting to draw a crowd. And so the Pharisees are like, wait a minute, this new character, Jesus, is starting to do more than what John was doing. And so what happened was Jesus is like, okay, yeah, here's my ministry. It's actually not me who's baptizing and doing all of the work. It's my disciples. And so Jesus kind of had it. He's like, listen, I need a break. We're going to leave, right? He kind of removes himself from the situation. He wants things to cool down a little bit. And so that's why he's traveling back to Galilee. And on the way, they make a pit stop. All right, what town are they in? What's the pit stop? Starts with an S. Samaria, right? They make this pit stop in Samaria, okay? Now, in this moment, you see the interaction that Jesus has with this woman. He simply asks her for water. And her response is like, well, wait a minute. You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for water? So in this moment, you have to understand, Samaria, people would go well out of their way to go around Samaria. Jews wanted nothing to do with Samaria, right? They didn't even want to go into their city or their town. And so they would go days out of their way to go around Samaria to get to where they wanted to go. Well, Jesus was like, no, we're going to go right through Samaria. So Jesus being a Jew, the disciples being Jews, here they are in Samaria, okay? Now, why did Jews hate Samaritans so much? Why did Jews hate Samaritans so much? Guys, listen, when I was in 10th grade, all right, I had a good friend of mine. His name was Joe. My buddy Joe and I, we would hang out often, and he would always put me up to stupid challenges. And I was thinking to myself as I was getting ready to tell you the story, and some of you have heard this before, I wondered why I'm friends with this guy, right, as I think about what he had me do when we were in high school. Even to this day, we're still good friends. In a couple weeks, he and his wife and kids are going to be coming out to visit. So we're still really close. We're good friends. Well, my buddy Joe and I, when we were sophomores in high school, we were at the mall one day, and he said, Todd, listen, here's the challenge I want you to do. The next girl that walks by, you need to talk to her, and you need to get her number. That was the challenge, all right? And I was like, easy, right? So this girl walks by, and we start talking. Her name was Jessica. And Jessica and I, we start hitting it off, right? Like, great conversation. We ended up exchanging numbers. It was great. And throughout the week, we were even texting. Joke's on my friend, because what happened was her and I talked for almost an hour, and he was left by himself. So I win, he loses. So I thought. Anyway, so this girl, Jessica, and I, we start texting throughout the week, and decided to get together that Friday. So Friday rolls around, we go see a movie, we hang out, great night, all was well. Well, Saturday I had this big family get-together, and it's something that we had never done before as a family. And so it was a family reunion, we come together, and while I was there, I turn around, this car pulls up, and Jessica gets out of the car. And I'm like, well, that's really strange, I wonder why she's here. And then it dawned on me that I'm at my family reunion, and found out that she's my cousin. Right? Straight up, right? And so here, Jessica is my second cousin, had no idea, right? So I went on a date with my cousin, guys. It's like straight up messed up, right? Yeah. Thank you, right? I am happily married, not to my cousin. Okay, so here's the thing. That day, the reason why I tell you this story, I actually had no reason to the story. I just wanted to tell you a funny story. No, really. The Jews hated the Samaritans because straight up, they were like distant cousins. All right? And the way that they interacted with each other, the Samaritans, like, they were once one, and they had disagreements. They didn't get along with each other, and so they separated, right? And the Jews looked down on the Samaritans. They were like the redheaded stepchild of the family in a way. That's so offensive. I'm so sorry. That's a phrase. I did not mean that, all right? The only reason why I'm looking at you is because she pointed you out, all right? It's a phrase, right? Any colored hair stepchild, right? And so what happens is here you have this disagreement with the Samaritans and the Jews, right? The Jews thought the Samaritans were impure, right? They actually worshiped the same God, but the Jews would view the Samaritans in a way that they felt like they weren't worshiping properly. And so they weren't on the same page. They didn't get along. So much so they pretty much avoided each other at all costs. And so at this moment when Jesus enters Samaria and he's at this well and this woman is drawing water and he says, listen, can I have some water? The woman is completely shocked, right? She's shocked because how is a Jew even interacting with me? How is this man who is a Jew interacting with me? And Jesus is just there and he sparks conversation. He simply just starts talking to her, all right? And so to make things a little bit, give more context to how much of a big deal this was, you need to know that this Samaritan woman was dealt a really rough hand. All right? It was a bad hand. If you've ever played cards before and you get like a card, you're like, I fold, right? There's no way. That's what I mean by this. This woman kind of had life thrown her way, and it really wasn't good. And here's some things. So let's take a look at the next couple of verses. Let's get a little bit more context to what's going on. All right? And we're going to start to see how, I don't know, the world, right? Kind of like the society really turned their back against this woman. So let's take a look here. Verse 9, we'll read it again, and then we'll keep moving forward. Verse 9, the Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? Flip over to verse 13. It says, Jesus answered, everyone who drinks the water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to the eternal life. The woman said to him, sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. He told her, go call your husband and come back. Verse 17, I have no husband, she replied. Jesus said to her, you were right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man that you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true. And so as you look at this verse, I think it's pretty safe to say that this woman has kind of had it pretty rough here. Right? We can imply that her life's difficult. There's a lot of oppressive situations that are taking place in her life. And a couple of these things that I want to point out that of what she was experiencing are actually things that people in this world are even experiencing to this day. And so here's a couple of them. All right? The first challenge that this woman, the Samaritan woman, was facing involved race. Right? We actually already talked about this, right? This woman was a racial outsider, right? According to Jews, Samaritans, right, were considered unclean. They were traitors. They were fools. And so here this woman has already kind of got this like mark against her for who she was. They were unclean because they supposedly worshiped God the wrong way. They were traitors because they split from the like united Jewish kingdom, right? They separated from them, so now they're traitors. And they're foolish because they wouldn't change their ways. And so that was the first challenge that this woman faced. The second thing was the way that this woman was marginalized by society because she was a woman. So the first issue was who she was as a Samaritan. Now it's because she is a woman. Think about this. If you look at chapter 4, you can skim ahead, please do, it's fine. As you read from verse 1 to the end, this entire chapter, all of these words, not once was her name mentioned. Right? So like Jesus is interacting with this woman. Jesus has this interaction, and we actually have this story kind of recorded. And no one stopped to actually get her name. Because you have to understand at this time it was very different. Right? Women at this time were treated mostly as property. I know that sounds harsh, but I have to give you an understanding of what this woman was experiencing. Right? She couldn't even give a testimony for herself. Like, she didn't have really a position because of who she was. So race was an issue, right? The fact that she was a woman was an issue. Here's the third thing this woman faced. This woman was actually abused by society, right? Through her prejudices here. Through the prejudice, because here's what I mean. The woman is at this well alone. It's in the middle of the day, it's like noon. And at that point, it's hot. People would go to this well early in the morning while the water was still cool. They would gather the water, they would use it for cooking, they would use it for bathing. Right? Much like we wake up, we get ready in the morning, we eat breakfast, and we're out the door. Similar. That's what's taking place. And so people would go, the Samaritans would go to the well early to gather the water. Well, this woman went in the middle of the day. She went when the water wasn't ideal. But she went because it was the time where she knew she wasn't going to be seen. That she didn't have to interact with anybody else. She didn't have to deal, right, with people, I don't know, verbally beating her up, right? Giving her a hard time for who she was, discriminating against her. And so here, the hand that this woman was dealt was unbelievable. So to really boil this down, Jews don't like her because she's a Samaritan. Men don't trust her because she's a woman. And the neighbors don't want to be around her because they think she's a sinner for cohabitating with men when she's not married. Man, this woman has it rough. But as we look at this, and what I think you and I can really gather from it, and it's just so important. I want you to look through those verses again. This is fascinating. Not once in this entire chapter, or this story about the Samaritan woman and how Jesus interacted with her, not once was the word sin found. Right? We use the word sin as kind of like where we fall short of the glory of God, where God expects us and wants us to live our lives in a certain way. And when we mess up from that, right, it's sin. We're introduced to that in the very beginning of the Bible, in Genesis. And so here, as you look at this chapter here in 4, as Jesus is interacting with this woman, the word sin does not show up. And so this passage is not about Jesus forgiving the woman's sin. That's actually not what he's getting to here. He never talks about it. All throughout the Bible, there's plenty of times where Jesus actually brings up, like he refers to people as sinners. He's interacted with tax collectors. He's interacted with a woman who was caught in adultery when she was drugged before Jesus to for him to bring judgment upon her. So we see that Jesus would call out those who have fallen short, but not here. He doesn't interact with her as a sinner. And so as we look at this passage, I want you to go back and look at verse 17 and 18 again. Because when we read this passage, I think we're tempted to listen to this woman's story and hear the phrase, "The man you now have is not your husband." And we gasp, right? We're like, what? Who's this man that she's with? But I think what we miss out on is we need to refocus our attention on the other part of that verse. I think we should hear that the fact is you have had 5 husbands. And the reason why I think that is so important is because we don't know what happened to the 5 previous relationships that she had. Think about this for a second, right? We don't know the heartbreak that she faced. What if her previous husbands died? What if her previous husbands actually left her, divorced her. Because remember, at this time, a woman couldn't divorce a man. A man could simply come to the woman at that time and say, hey, listen, we're done. I'm out. Bye. Hand her a slip of paper saying we're divorced and walk out the door and leave her nothing. So you think about this, you're like, wow, this woman has experienced a ton. The heartbreak that she could have faced. And so I think our focus, our attention needs to shift a little bit on how we view these verses. It's not that she's with a man who's not her husband, but it's that she had previously 5 relationships that are no longer existent, right? And we don't know what this interaction with this new guy is about. Is there a level of dependency that she has on him? Is it an abusive relationship where she feels like she can't get out? I think there's multiple things about this story that help us see that it's actually a story of almost tragedy over a story of something that's scandalous. It's a little bit of a different picture, and I'll be honest, my attention was shifted on this a little bit as I was studying it. And so here this woman has experienced racial discrimination, gender discrimination, perhaps both death and divorce, and possibly even abuse. And now no one will walk and interact with her. No one. Except for one person. And that's Jesus. And so as we see this interaction, I think we start to gain a different perspective of his interaction with her. I encourage you, as you think about this story, even write this down. Jesus approached the woman at the well in order to heal her heart. Jesus approached the woman at the well in order to heal her heart. Right, you see in this story, Jesus was the one traveling. Jesus is the one that asks her for water. Jesus is even the one that started the conversation with her. She didn't initiate it, he did. This woman had no idea what was about ready to go down in her day. She wasn't even there seeking out God. She was literally there to get her water and to go home. And as I said before, the word sin doesn't show up. And so at no point is Jesus inviting this woman to repent for what she's done. He's not doing that. This woman's not perfect. None of us are. Right? And so there's a lot I think that we can even parallel our own lives with this woman here in a second. We're going to press into that more. But though this woman isn't perfect, she's committed sins like all of us. But in this moment, the issue to address is not her sinfulness. It's her brokenness. It's not her sinfulness, it's her brokenness. And Jesus sought her out, not to convict her or condemn her, but to heal her heart. Guys, I think this is so important. Well, how does Jesus heal her heart? Guys, last week, you remember, I'm like, okay, this represents our heart, right? $1 at Walmart if you want one. But as you look at this, this represents our heart. And as you think about this idea of being overflowed, I shared with you that sometimes our heart is broken. And what happens is, there's no way that we can overflow from our heart because we've got holes. We've got cracks. Things in our life has caused us. Now, remember last week when I said the sound makes you really have to go to the bathroom? Really should have went again before I started. But as you think about this, all right, we have things in our lives that cause us to be broken. And we don't have the ability to experience the overflow at which what we're talking about. And so how does Jesus heal her heart? He does it by seeing her when prejudice motivated others to ignore her. He heals her heart by listening to her when men thought she wasn't to be trusted. He healed her heart by treating her as a beloved child of God when the racial discrimination had taught her that she was less than a human. He started to heal her heart. Jesus asked for water, right? And what this did was put her into the driver's seat of the conversation. He started to dialogue with her. He started to explain kind of, hey, I can provide water that could eliminate thirst. He doesn't just come right out and say who he is. He wanted the walls to come down in the conversation a little bit. He wanted her to feel comfortable so that she could come out of her shell and start talking to him and have this conversation. But Jesus saw her in her brokenness. Jesus saw her in what she was experiencing in her life, and he did not rush to fix it. He didn't see it as sin. He saw it as an opportunity to grow a relationship and begin to address some of the pain that she was experiencing in her life. And I loved what happens is because her guard comes down, she starts to actually ask questions that led Jesus to reveal who he was. To reveal the truth about who he is. Something that the disciples haven't even been able to experience yet. I encourage you to look at this a little bit further. We've got a couple more verses that I want us to look at. But she responds to Jesus in the way that he was interacting with her. Her guard came down, and Jesus revealed the truth of who he is. Take a look at John 4, verse 25. It says, the woman said, I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. And when he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. He confesses to her that he is the Messiah. And in that very moment, with this conversation, she now knows who he is. And I think the thing that sticks out to me, perhaps the most extraordinary piece to this chapter or this text in the story about the Samaritan woman, is not that Jesus healed her heart. I don't think that's the best part. I think the best part is that she actually became a witness of Jesus. That she went and started to proclaim the truth of who he is. Look at verse 28. It says, then leaving her water jar. Right? The whole reason why she was at the well. She just kicks it. I don't need this anymore. I don't care. And she sprints back. The woman went back to the town and said to the people, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? She runs back to town, to the group of people that pretty much had the target on her back. Ran back to the very people who did nothing but display hatred towards her. And she goes back and says, listen, come meet this man who has told me everything that I've done. And she starts to ask them, listen, could this be the Messiah? I think that's the best part of this story. It's not about what she's done. It's not about what Jesus did to her by healing her heart, though that's an incredible piece to the story that we're going to end on. But I think it's because she became a witness for him. Guys, as we think about this in our own lives, right? I think there are many of us sitting in this room that have broken hearts, a broken vessel. We've been hurt. We have experienced things in our lives that cause us to have the holes in our heart. And for some of us, we need to experience the grace of God in our lives to come and kind of heal us. Maybe it's a relationship that ended bad for you. Maybe you lost a loved one. Maybe it's society pointing out things that make you different from everybody else, or make you stand out in the crowd that you're in, and you're called out for that. All of this stuff can cause us to have holes in our heart. And I'll tell you, there are many things when I was sitting in your seat, when I was living through middle school and high school and into college, many things that I'll be honest, I am shocked that my heart was ever mended, that my heart was ever healed. Like if I had a hammer and I just banged this pumpkin multiple times and just broke it into pieces, that would have resembled my heart. But listen, wherever you are, no matter what you've experienced, God comes into our lives and starts to patch the holes. Starts to experience in our lives healing. I shouldn't have poked so many holes in this pumpkin. He allows us to experience the truth of who He is. He meets us where we are in the midst of our wrongdoings. He's not calling us out. He's just trying to get to know us. He's just trying to begin a relationship with us. And as Jesus met with this Samaritan woman that day, He wanted her to know who He was so that she can experience freedom, so that she can experience a mended heart. Because what happens when we experience the truth of who He is and the love that He has for us, our heart becomes healed. Maybe. Just kidding. Kinda. That didn't work. I tried. But what happens is God's love for you can work in a way that you can experience freedom from some of the stuff that life throws our direction. Some of you have experienced pain like none other. Some of you dread going home because you know home correlates to pain. Some of you dread the fact that you are back in person meeting at school because you hate having to walk down the hallway. And it's not because you have to wear a mask. Maybe you dread walking into this room on a Wednesday night because you're afraid someone's going to find out what happened earlier this week. Guys, every single one of us have a broken heart, a broken vessel. And every single one of us needs the love of Jesus in our lives, where He can come and begin to heal you and I. I'm going to invite the band to come up, and as they get settled in, this is what I want us to do. I want you to know, first off, that you have a God who loves you more than anything. Whether you have a relationship with Jesus, if you know who He is or not, I need you to know that you are loved. And I also want you to know that when you walk into the doors here on a Wednesday night, this is a place for you to be you. I want you to walk into this building okay with your broken heart. But I don't want you to just settle for it to be broken. I want you to be open to what God can do in and through you. I want you to know that He can meet you right where you're at no matter what you've done. And some of you carry some weight about your past. Some of you have a hard time looking at us in the eyes because you know what the past of what happened, right? You know what was taking place in the past, and there's that guilt that comes with it. Jesus didn't call out this woman for her sin. She looked at this woman and said, "You are living a life of tragedy. And I want to embrace you. I want you to know who I am and what I'm doing for you." And guys, at the very core of everything that we talk about here at Merge, the very core of what this story represents, it's about what Jesus did on the cross for you and I. That we can experience a heart that can be healed. That you and I can experience an eternity in heaven with Jesus because of what He's done. Because of the price that He paid for you and I. It is the best example and the only example of perfect love. And he has that for you. The band's going to play a song, and as they play this song, I just want you to take time, sing it, stand, do what you got to do. But I want you to personally just think for yourself where you are when it comes to a relationship with him. You might have been walking in here tonight thinking that you just had a good time with your friends, just like the woman went to the well to get water. And my prayer is that when you walk out of this building tonight, you leave with much more. That you leave with an understanding of who Jesus is and the love that he has for each one of us. And that your heart can begin the process of being healed. I also want you to know that there are adults here who care about you, that they'll come every single Wednesday to be here with you. That if life's hard and you need to talk about what's going on, please find us. Please talk to us. We would love to link arms with you and help you. But we're going to point you back to who Jesus is every time. So while the band plays, would you just think through that? And maybe tonight marks the night where that relationship with Jesus, understanding what he's done for you, happens for the very first time. And if that's you, I encourage you, tell your friend, tell me, tell somebody in the band. That's great. We want to celebrate with you if that's tonight for you. All right, let's pray. Jesus, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the interaction that you had with this woman at the well. Everything was going kind of the opposite for her, Lord. She was not in a good place, but you met her where she was. And you allowed her to experience your love. You allowed her to experience who you are. God, that's my prayer for all of us in this room, that tonight we would understand that love that you have for us. But Lord, that we would also get a glimpse of who you are, and that we can draw closer to you tonight. Lord, if there are students in this room that are experiencing absolute heartbreak, whatever life is throwing their way, Lord, would you just give them a glimpse of hope? Would you give them some encouragement to know that they can experience a healed heart? So that what we can do with that allows us to continue to fill back up and overflow with the love that you have for us so that others can experience it just like this woman did. She didn't hold the truth of who you were to herself. She went to the very place where she was hated, and she shared the truth of you. For some of us, Lord, we need that boldness as well. God, would you be with us tonight? Would you heal our hearts and allow us to experience your love tonight? We pray this in your name.